Hello, everyone. We are going to do a quick ministry update on one of our local partners at LifeBridge of Safe Families for Children of Southeastern Wisconsin. And we have today Amy Bahr, who is not only a good friend and someone that has been part of LifeBridge since its beginning, but also an employee and strong advocate for safe families for children. And so, Amy, as we start, can you just remind us of what Safe Families for Children is and, kind of the mission and why it's important that we partner with them as a church?
Safe Families is a movement really of communities and not just the church, but communities as a whole. And we partner with churches. That's where we recruit most of our volunteers. So the idea is that we're mobilizing the community to be a neighbor and just support each other. So when there's families who hit a crisis and have nobody to turn to, then they can call Safe Families, and through our bridge to local churches can get those supports in place to help stabilize their crisis and just offer them family-like supports.
So can you give us just some highlights of some wins and just great stories from 2021?
Sure. 2021, gosh. So we had uh, through October, we don't have quite all of the data for the calendar year of 2021, but through October, we had 183 plus new family friendships, which I think are super cool because it's not removing a kid from their family. So those family friendships are just supporting people without disrupting the family, coming alongside them, anything you would call on a friend for. And then there were 197 new hostings. So that's when a kid is hosted with one of our volunteer families. And then there were 53 new host families added, which is exciting because we need new volunteers all the time. And so just one quick story that I think is really awesome and just completely embodies the whole mission of Safe Families and it exemplifies everything that we try to do. So for confidentiality's sake, I'm going to refer to this mom as Sharon. That's not her real name, but she was adopted in her youth, and then her adoptive family moved her out to California. And then she grew up out there. That's where she built her life. She started a relationship there, turned out to be abusive, and her partner actually ran her over with a car. That was the decision really that made her decide to leave. So on average, it takes domestic violence victims 7 times before they actually leave successfully. So this was a big deal for her to move halfway across the country because she found her biological family was here in Wisconsin. And so here in our local Southern chapter, we were able to find out about her story because when she reconnected with her biological family, she found out they weren't really that supportive and healthy for her either. Her biological brother was actually also abusive and unsafe for her 2 elementary age kids to be around. So at this point in her life, she's in an area where she physically doesn't know anything because she's moved halfway across the country, and she's doesn't know anybody, or the people that she does know are unsafe people for her. So she's got an apartment, she's got a job, things are okay until, as we can all just join in these miserable times with COVID quarantines and illness and just all the things that make you have to stay home, which meant she couldn't go to work. So her employer was very accommodating as much as they could, but ultimately it was a business. And there came a day where she had to decide, go to work and keep your job, leave the kids home alone, or stay home with your kids and lose your job, which would ultimately lead to losing her housing because without income, she wouldn't be able to pay her rent. So she made a super, super hard decision and said she's going to go to work. She was going to leave her kids home. And her neighbor reported her to CPS. She noticed that she had left and the kids were still there. So this right here is where I like to pause and say, this is where we're trying to create, through Safe Families, this just societal shift and change, and trying to create community. So when this mom who really loves her kids and she really wants to care for them just doesn't have the means and the support, um, would have a neighbor to call on, not have a neighbor call CPS on her. Um, but through that, her CPS worker came out and did an assessment to find out what's going on. Are these kids unsafe? And through that, realized indeed Sharon was a really good mom. She loved her kids and wanted to do anything she could to keep them safe, and just simply lacked the resources and supports. So her CPS worker called Safe Families and suggested Sharon connect with Safe Families. Sharon was actually really desperate for community and wanted to get connected to a church, but didn't know how, wanted relationships, didn't know how. And so once she got connected with Safe Families, there was an older couple who kind of took on like a grandma grandpa role, who just started getting to know her. They invited her to their church and she started going to church with them. And now she is just flourishing with supports and friendships and relationships. And CPS closed their case, never took the kids in foster care. They found really no reason for them to be involved once she had those supports in place. So that it was
That's
just a
awesome.
really incredible story. Not all of them are like that, obviously, but it was just completely embodies everything that we want to do and our mission and how we do it.
Hmm. Wow, that's incredible. And that happened this year, you were saying?
Yes, just recently, actually, our referral is still open with her, kind of tying up some loose ends, and then she'll have those informal relationships on her own, and Safe Families will have come and gone and done our thing, and
Yeah,
done that change for her in her life.
that's so great. And can you just, as we come to a close here, can you just give some, highlights of some things you can anticipate needing going into a new year? Maybe just reminders of how we can, different ways to volunteer or help out, or any specific needs you can see for 2022.
Sure. 2022, I know, without having a lot of details about them, there are a couple other sites around the state that are looking to open new chapters. So that's exciting. And it's also an immense amount of work. And usually some of the other staff around the state will kind of pitch in to get them up and running. And so that stretches everybody a little bit.
Hmm.
So it's exciting. And we could definitely use some prayers about all of those chapters that are wanting to open up. Also speaks that God is moving. There's different organizations and community people who are coming to Safe Families and saying, we want you here. We want to see your movement in our community. So that's super exciting. And also the super awkward but always necessary ask of donations. We are a nonprofit, and so we function on donations. And even just $10 a month has been able to make a huge impact. We have done different campaigns of 100 people for $10 a month, or different things like that. And the final one that I'm going to highlight, I have just at the beginning of the school year switched into a church engagement role. And that means I'm kind of recruiting more churches and recruiting more volunteers ultimately. So one of the things that we've been seeing in the last couple of years is some of our original volunteers are reaching what we'd call saturation, where they've connected with a number of families already and they've built those long lasting relationships and they just don't have the capacity for more. So they're kind of on their way out, which means we need to recruit a new generation of volunteers to connect with more families. So more volunteers, donations, and as always, prayers, because this is a ministry that we really want to make sure that we're bringing God's kingdom to our communities.
Absolutely. And then if anyone has additional questions, obviously they can check the website. Can they also shoulder tap you or contact you if they?
Absolutely. Please. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, for your time and for all the work that you do for children across the state.
Thanks.